What's up, Liquid Trucking? Welcome into episode 77 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Every time that I say a higher number than I did last week, it blows my head off my shoulders. 77 episodes of the Liquid Trucking Podcast in, and we are still cooking with so much gas. We might even be cooking with race fuel, alcohol, the stuff that makes a really loud noise at the drag strip. We got so much momentum on this podcast. It just fills me up every single day. You drivers are a big part of that, and I do want to give you one more, just announcement here that we're always accepting your ideas for segments. That doesn't mean that we're only accepting your ideas for segments. We got quite a few minds on this thing, but we really like to talk about what the drivers want to hear about. That is the main directive here on this podcast. That and getting you all the pertinent safety and company updates that you need. You know, we want to talk to you about truck stuff or not truck stuff. The movie episode was phenomenal. The tattoo episode, one of my favorites. So we'll literally take your suggestions. A lot of you drivers are constantly sending them to me. I really do appreciate it. Understand if I haven't gotten back in direct touch with you yet. We've just got a little bit of a backlog, and I'll be honest with you, it's a good problem to have. I actually looked up before, what was it? It would have been like April 21st. I think that was a Monday, April 21st. We had a meeting and I looked up and we were booked all the way through the month of May with podcast episodes ready to go, interviews scheduled, segments planned. So we're in a really good spot right here, but we're never turning away good ideas from Liquid drivers. So email me, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or if you have my phone number, of course, you know it's wide open for you to reach out whenever you want to via call or text. You can send me your segment or episode topic ideas. I really like them. And one that I've been working on here, trying to figure out a way that I want to do it, and I think I'm just going to have the driver that suggested it come on and talk to me about this from his perspective, is what are you trucking towards? What's the end goal? Are you trying to stay here until retirement? Do you want to start a business and you're working this job to make a bunch of money so that you can do that? Maybe the whole goal is to get to a driver trainer and maybe try to get into a terminal job somewhere. Maybe you're a grease monkey and you just can't wait for a good job to open in the shop and you're going to jump on it. I really would like to know what you are trucking towards. And I got this idea. I want to make sure that I give the right person credit because I've failed at this in the past. Big ups to Mike Stanfield, my guy, old Redbeard out there. He was the one that brought that up. So definitely, if you've got suggestions, I've got Drive for Gold points, and I want to give them to you guys for giving me good stuff to talk about because you're never short on awesome stuff for us to discuss. Once again, the email address podcast@liquidtrucking.com. Also, over at liquidtrucking.com, you will find our podcast landing page. I talk about it almost every damn episode. If you don't know where it's at by now, well, I just told you. It's at liquidtrucking.com. You click my face right up at the top of the page, and it will take you to our podcast landing page. And we got a V2 of that one coming soon, so stay tuned because I can't wait to show you guys all of the amazing work that my web ninja Tyler will be doing for it. I could start calling him a spider. I just realized that because he's a web ninja. Tyler the Spider, he's not going to like that at all. He's a great dude, fun-loving, great sense of humor. He does not strike me as a guy that would be excited about the name Tyler the Spider. So maybe I'll just keep that between you, me, and the other thousands of people listening to this episode right now as we speak. What do we got going on for episode 77? It's actually kind of a unique episode, and I want you guys to understand that sometimes when I have an interview like this next one that we're going to get to here shortly, it's a lot like my conversations with the drivers. I plan for, 30 to 45 minutes, anywhere in there. I'm happy. If we only get 20 minutes out of it, I can deal with it. I'm good, man. I know what I'm doing here. But this one, I will let run long every single time. And I'll let a lot of interviews run long. This one I would have let run even longer. Because joining us here shortly is the Director of Safety and Compliance for TVC Pro-Driver. His name is Brian Runnels. And if you just type his name into Google, you type Brian Runnels, TVC Pro-Driver, what you will see is that he has done a ton of podcast and like podcast type content is what I'll say. Lots of interviews on podcasts, lots of webinars, lots of presentations. He's given presentations to the American Trucking Association, the Oklahoma Trucking Association, and those are just the first two that I saw. There is a laundry list of presentations that Brian has given. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He's got 19 years behind the wheel. He was a driver trainer, worked in almost every aspect outside of the cab of the truck in trucking as well. And this is just kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole conversation. We will talk about TVC Pro-Driver, the company that Brian works for, and what they can do for you, not only the liquid trucking driver, but any other driver that might be listening to this podcast. We know there's a lot of you out there. TVC Pro-Driver is a great program. They will help you. They will advocate for you. They will help you get your tickets and your violations adjudicated in a way that thinks of you first rather than the government official or the person that's trying to pin said citation or violation on you. It's a really cool product, and I just want to give Brian all the time that we have for this episode for him to just talk us through A, what TVC Pro-Driver can offer you, and B, I'm going to bring up some of the stuff that's going on in the industry right now. Brian is so well read in on this stuff that I can't not talk to him about certain things. There was an executive order that just came down I want to talk to him about. I want to talk to him about some pictures lately that I've been seeing about the ports. Things are iffy in the transportation industry right now, and having a guy like Brian Runnels on to talk with us about it, I would be remiss if I didn't get his thoughts on a couple of these big issues in trucking. So without further ado, like I said, saving all the time for Brian here because this interview, it will go down as a top 5 interview, one of my favorites I've ever done here on this podcast. So please enjoy my time with the Director of Safety and Compliance for TVC Pro-Driver, Brian Runnels.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
Very excited for our next guest joining us here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, making his first appearance of what I hope will be many with us here on the LTP. He's got 19 years of experience as a driver trainer and experience across the board in the transportation industry and risk management, transport insurance, sales, and of course, safety and compliance. You may have heard him on Truck Safe Live, the Sonic Safety Podcast, and more webinars than you can shake a tire thumper at. Please welcome my guest today, Director of Safety and Compliance from TVC Pro-Driver, Brian Runnels. Brian, thank you so much for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. Happy to be here, Marcus.
Now, you are constantly joining podcasts, doing webinars, things like that. So I want to tell the drivers out here, Brian's got a lot of experience doing what we're doing, and a lot of people that come on this podcast are talking into a mic for the first time. So understand my excitement as we breach this conversation a little bit with somebody that has a lot of experience talking about trucking. And let's just jump right into it here, Brian. I want to learn a little bit about TVC Pro-Driver first, right off the top, because I understand this service is really helpful for drivers. So tell me just a little bit about what a driver could get from TVC Pro-Driver if they were interested.
Sure. Yeah. So TVC Pro-Driver is a company that, on a 10,000 foot overview, helps secure legal representation for a driver in case they receive a citation out on the road. So we have a network of about 7,000 attorneys all over the country. And no matter really the jurisdiction that you're in, if you receive a citation in one of those jurisdictions, we have an attorney that can go to court for you, fight for a reduction or dismissal of the ticket, or mitigate that cost that's affiliated with it. Also on the back end, if there was an inspection report that went with it and the officer wrote up a violation on the inspection report, one of the things that drivers may or may not know that if in most states, I can't speak in definites because as soon as you do, you're done for.
Yep.
But in most states and in most jurisdictions, once the citation is adjudicated, and we have a disposition from that court case, we can then challenge the violation that was written on the inspection report to have that removed as well. So we on the safety and compliance side, we help drivers and companies challenge crashes, uh, challenge regular violations on inspection reports. That's not as easy as it sounds. We've got to have some sort of good proof and good reason why we're going to challenge just a violation. You get a violation for a flat tire and you don't think it was flat. We just can't go back to that officer and say, no, it wasn't flat. That is not going to fly. But we do our best to challenge those types of things. And there's other benefits that go with being part of TVC. You have spousal coverage when you pay for your monthly subscription. It's subscription based. So you have spousal coverage. There's discounts on hotels and other types of things there too. But our bread and butter is the legal services side of things.
That's so cool. And this is available to drivers and fleets, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. I had phone calls with a couple fleets today that we're talking to. And then yes, an individual driver can sign up for it on their own. They can do it through the website. They can do it in person in some locations. We were purchased by Love's about a year ago. So we're starting to roll out more and more. And drivers that have been around a while, they remember back in the day that, companies like ours were in the truck stops. And in fact, TVC was in the truck stops. And, you could sign up right there. So we're going back to a little bit of that in certain locations. So be on the lookout for them out there.
That's really cool. And we love Loves here at Liquid Trucking. In fact, we just had a podcast featuring a representative from Loves talking about some of their new ventures that they're getting into with new locations and the like. And it's I think kind of it's a very legitimizing thing to have a company like Loves take interest in your company and purchase the company to be under their umbrella. And the drivers listening, I just want you to know, if Loves trusts them, it's a pretty good call right there. Liquid loves, like we said. So that's so cool. I had no idea that prior to recent history, you could go into a truck stop and find a company like yours in there just trying to sell their product and trying to educate people on it. That's really
cool. Yeah. There was a kiosk, and you could walk up and just talk to them and yep, sign up right there if you wanted to. I remember that when I was driving. I came off the road at the end of 2011, and God, it seemed like it was almost up until that point that they were out there. So it's been a minute, but yeah, it's not in too distant history.
Sure. But it's right in there. It's the lost art of the kiosk. I mean, malls are going away, we just don't have kiosks as often anymore, but hey, I mean, I still have the same cell phone number that I got from a kiosk when I first moved to Eugene, Oregon in 2003. So there's some of us millennials have those memories just seared in,
Right. Exactly.
There was something, I was doing some research, looking over some of your work, and there was something that really jumped out to me that I want to make sure that we talk about so the drivers can hear it. And I know for a lot of people, especially if you've been driving for 20, 30 years, this is going to be maybe old hat for you a little bit. But I know there's a lot of new drivers out there that might not quite understand the difference between a citation and a violation, which is something that obviously you guys over at TVC Pro-Driver know very well, Brian. So can you talk to me a little bit about the difference between those two and maybe how TVC Pro-Driver will aid in whether you had a violation or a citation? And you did touch on it a little bit here, but I want to dig a little bit deeper there.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding of the words. So violations are infractions written up on an inspection report.
Okay.
So that's what a violation is. A citation is a separate piece of paper, and that is a civil penalty.
Right.
Most of the time accompanied by a fine. So they can work together. They can be written together. They can be written separately, depending on the officer that's writing the infraction. Because officers have to be qualified or certified to do an inspection on a vehicle. So that's why not every officer can do it. He can write you a ticket. He can write you a citation for a flat tire or he wouldn't look at your logbook, but if he if he
Speeding
sees
or
you speeding, yeah,
yeah.
some sort of traffic infraction, yes, they can write you a ticket for that. Where an officer that is trained to do inspections, now they can generate an inspection report, and they affect two different things.
Mhm.
So a citation will hit your MVR. That's the biggest thing. A violation written on an inspection report that hits yours and the company's CSA score.
Right.
So once again, if you get an inspection report, there actually is a column on there that says citation, yes or no. And it oftentimes will have the citation number that was written to go along with the violation that's on the inspection report.
Got it.
So those I did a presentation on it at the Mid America Truck Show this year
Yep.
about that, and I got quite a few questions afterwards, just asking for more clarification on how they interact, how they interplay, and what are the steps to do to fix them. A citation has to go to court. That's the only way it can really get taken care of without just paying the fine, which
Right.
is, that's an option too. You can just pay the fine and accept that that's going to go on your MVR. To where a violation on an inspection report, that has to go through the data queues process.
Mhm.
And that is, and a lot of drivers don't know they can do that on their own. They can. It helps to have someone do it that kind of knows what they're doing and knows the right terminology to use and some of the words not to use and things like that. And
Right.
that gets submitted to the state that issued the violation. So that's the differences between the two, and how the steps that take place to get them adjudicated if you need to have them looked at.
Sure, sure. And that's kind of touching on why TVC Pro-Driver could be so important for drivers. You mentioned the vocabulary and the legalese, as they call it. If you were being prosecuted for stealing from a retail store that you worked for and you didn't do it, and you had proof, would you go get a lawyer, or would you go and try to defend yourself in the court of law? It's sort of the same thing, right? Because we could be talking about your job here with citations and safety violations. So really smart to hook up with a company like TVC Pro-Driver that has, I mean, would you say 7,000 attorneys or something like that in your
Yeah,
network?
yeah, nationwide, that's what we have. And here's the other thing too for drivers. Okay, your court date is what, 60 days from now. What are the chances that you're going to be able to get back to that location, find a place to park, and either Uber or something to get to the court?
Mm-hmm.
How much time does that take, and how many loads could you possibly miss trying to get the load that you need to get to that courthouse?
Yeah.
So that's where the a huge benefit is for using somebody like us to fight those tickets for you.
Yeah, because they don't make it easy on you. I mean, I've pled no
No.
contest to a parking ticket before, and the hoops I had to jump through just to kind of admit that I was guilty while also saying that I'm not going to admit that to you was mind blowing, because I'm still paying the same fine. Like, the fine didn't change it, but I had to do so much just to go in and say, yeah, I'm sorry. I totally understand that. And I got to say, fantastic thought for a service here. I mean, what a great idea for you to put together this network, and the company just out there helping drivers, which is all we want. When we talk about citations versus violations, I had one question in there. You said officers had to be qualified to issue or to generate a inspection. Can
Mm-hmm.
they order one? If, let's say, I'm an officer, I've pulled you over for speeding, I've got a few things I'm looking at that don't look okay. Can I order you to go in for an inspection from another officer that is qualified? Is that something that ever happens?
Typically, that truck won't be moved, and yeah, you can order that, but that inspector is going to have to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's most likely, and a lot of times we see that in some states at scale houses,
Oh.
to where the people in the scale house might be qualified to do a what they call a level 3 inspection, which is strictly paperwork,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not certified to go into the vehicle and do actual maintenance stuff. They'll have to call an officer that is certified to come in and do those inspections, which now you're adding even more time to it,
Yeah.
because maybe that officer is doing a roadside inspection somewhere, and he's going to have to finish that up, drive where you're at, get reset up and do the inspection.
No shortage of frustrations that are possible for our drivers to run into out there, huh, Brian?
No, and it's not. And a big part of that is also they're understaffed as well.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they're hugely understaffed. So some states are putting any inspector they can out on the road to actually do enforcement, traffic enforcement as well. So, you know, they're working double as we are. And, you know, that adds to frustration for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's great information there. And I hope that we cleared it up for some drivers if you had questions. And of course, if you have more questions, feel free to send us an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. I'll do my best to get that in front of the right people, or even maybe send Brian an email, see if he can help me out here a
Please
little
do.
bit. We want,
Yeah, please do.
I appreciate that, Brian. We want the drivers to have all the information because that's the thing. No one person can know everything. And a lot of the times what we're trying to do on this podcast is get some drivers on here to talk so that maybe we can pass on some lessons. And the lessons that you've been passing on today have been right in line with what we want to do, which kind of brings me to my next talking point here, Brian. Can you kind of talk about how your experience, 19 years in driver training, that's a long time. How does that experience kind of translate into your current role as director of safety and compliance for TVC Pro-Driver, and just what you learned out there on the road?
Yeah, sure. So it was actually it was a total of 19 years driving. The last 8 were in training.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's okay. It probably a little hard to read through wherever you pulled that from, but you know, the last 8 years, I was an over the road trainer. I was a guy that had the new driver in the truck with me the whole time. And, you know, the big thing to me when it came to training a driver right was, yeah, the nuts and bolts of it, as far as, you know, backing and handling and cornering and doing all those things that you needed to do were important, but teaching drivers how to live on the road, how to trip plan, how to manage their downtime, that was just as important, if not more important, than the nuts and bolts. I believe that just about anybody can train a driver how to go down the road. That's the easy part of the job. But to do it, to make the most of your time and the most of your hours that you're allotted, that was the key. And I've seen that go away by and large.
Mm-hmm.
And a driver that can trip plan is going to make a lot more money than a driver that's just not trustworthy and, you know, doesn't necessarily get there at the time he's supposed to get there. And, you know, that's when dispatch kind of loses faith in you. And, you know, they won't give you your next load until that one's empty.
Mm-hmm.
So where a good driver can be planned ahead because they trust that you're going to be where you say you're going to be when you're going to be there. So that's a huge thing for me in training, is just teaching drivers how to live on the road more so than just backing up or taking or all that stuff. And as I've gone through my safety and compliance time, it's amazing to see that holds true pretty much 100% of the time. Drivers that get flustered and leave the industry and stuff like that, there's a good chance that they were not very good trip planners. I will say that.
I can absolutely, you know, I don't have any driving experience aside from some over the road sales I did, you know, years back. So think of it as a fraction of the amount of time on the road. But one thing I noticed is that those first 3 or 4 months for me, just acclimating to that much driving, eating in the truck, you know, being on the phone all the time, trying to communicate with accounts, it was really tough. And another thing that I see doing this podcast is, by and large, drivers want tips from other drivers on how to get through certain situations. And a lot of it is, what do you keep on the truck? How do you cook in the truck? What do you like to have for creature comforts? How are you running your TV? That type of stuff is very important. We take for granted the fact that, I mean, I work from home, Brian. I don't have to have anything adjusted for me to get off work and go about my daily life. Thinking about how to outfit your truck with all of the things that you might possibly need in both an emergency and a normal day is a huge undertaking in itself. And, I've also got a friend in the industry. Well, he's not in the industry anymore. He's retired, got a couple million miles under his belt. He bangs the drum about trip planning more than anybody that I've ever listened to. And I think that it just kind of highlights it there, listening to you talk about it. Efficiency is huge. If you're out there making, if you're getting paid by the mile, of course, efficiency is your best friend, right?
Absolutely. And we see shifts in the industry I've seen over the years to where, when I came in, it was kind of the standard. Everybody that was advertising in those little truck stop books that we used to pick up that had all the recruiting ads in them, it was normal that 17 to 21 days was common.
Mm.
That's what, that's how long drivers were out. And then there was a shift towards being home weekly. And, you got to make a choice there. Like you said, we're paid by the mile by and large. If those wheels aren't rolling, you're not making any money. So you're going to have to give up one to get the other.
Yep.
And I've tried both, and I was much more successful being gone 3-4 weeks at a time. It sucked being away from the family that long, but we made a good living that way.
Sure, absolutely. And that's what it's all about. No question. I mean, we know we talk to enough drivers on this podcast. That paycheck is a very important part of the whole gig. So,
yeah, that's exactly it. And
totally understand.
Freight has changed now. Freight has changed in a way that, you look at all the warehouses surrounding. I live here in Indianapolis. We are completely surrounded by warehouses. And it seems like the only thing that really goes cross country anymore is things that are specialized. Produce, some food stuff where it can only be grown in certain areas of the country. Okay, it's got to be trucked or shipped, to other parts of the country. But goods and a lot of the perishable goods and even some durable goods, they can put those in warehouses outside of a major city, and now the freight is moving 250 miles at a time instead of 700-800 miles at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And the bad part about it for drivers, and I totally get it, is the mileage rate has not improved enough to change with the changing of the freight base.
Right.
We can say what we want about freight being soft or, the price. Yeah, the rates suck, and they have for, God, it seems like forever now, at least a couple years. But also, when you're only getting 250 miles at a pump instead of 700 to 1,000, that definitely takes its toll as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you kind of bring that up. I do have some other things. I'm just so you're thinking about it, and I can put it in the back of your mind now. At the end of the interview here, I'm going to ask you about success stories from drivers. If you can share any success stories from drivers that used TVC Pro-Driver. But you brought up the state of the industry, and I feel like a guy like you, I would be remiss if I don't talk about some of the big things happening right now in trucking. And of course, we do record this a couple weeks in advance, so understand, drivers, that much of this news might not be breaking at the moment that you hear about it. But this was just news that I heard yesterday. So I'm guessing maybe sometime here, this was just a Monday thing for our President Donald Trump. Talk to me a little bit about the new executive order that is going to place drivers out of service if they are not proficient in the English language, Brian. I talk to drivers all the time. They tell me that this is a problem. That's my only frame of reference for it. I'd like to know from somebody that works within the industry like you, kind of what your thoughts are on this and what you've seen with your experience out there on the road.
Sure. Yeah, there are a lot of drivers on the road that are from foreign countries. And, the English speaking proficiency is an issue when it comes to interactions with law enforcement. And, I can probably use the description of not being able to understand or read what a runaway ramp is.
Mm-hmm.
Something that simple is crucial. Now, as far as the executive order that came down yesterday, it used to be an out of service violation. In 2016, they removed I believe it was 2016, they removed the out of service criteria for non-English speaking drivers and put a memorandum in that basically gave drivers the right to use Google Translate or even a translator to interact with law enforcement or anybody else that they need it for. The big thing that this thing did yesterday is it rescinded that memorandum.
Right.
So that is no longer in play. Now, my only question is the proficiency test, and I'm trying to be fair on this. Trust me, if someone doesn't understand what the heck an officer is trying to tell you, or emergency personnel are trying to tell you, yeah, you don't have much of a leg to stand on to be able to drive here. However, if it's going to be enforced, I want it to be enforced equally across the board.
Right.
So just because and the example that came to my mind today was forwarding logs to an officer during a roadside inspection. That can be confusing for someone that they speak and understand English well enough, but they're not understanding the request.
Got it.
So is that misunderstanding of the request going to be misinterpreted as not understanding English? To where, the one violation is a minimal violation, the other one's an out of service. Yeah. And the other, so I just wanted to see the enforcement done equally across the board. And so it leaves very little room for interpretation.
Sure.
Or leaves room for subjective enforcement. Because I don't think any of us would want to have a subjective enforcement on anything we do.
Yeah,
we want it equal across the board. Yeah. The other piece is, you get an out of service violation for hours of service. Okay. They shut you down for 10 hours, 34 hours, whatever it takes to get your hours right. And then you can leave. Maintenance is the same way. You get shut down because you have a blown tire. Okay. That's an out of service violation. Someone comes out, fixes the tire, and you're on your way. What are they going to do with this? Do they put this person's just out of service roadside forever? Do they have to find somebody to come get them? What about the equipment? What about the load? Do they have to send another driver out along with an Uber
right?
To get this driver? How is that going to be? And maybe law enforcement just says, "Don't care, not my problem."
Sure,
and it's entirely possible. They're within the right to do that. But I'm curious to see how that goes. And I'm also curious to see if somebody like the ACLU steps up and says, yeah, no, this isn't cool. So those are the couple things that I'm looking at when it comes to this.
Let me ask you this. Do you know much about, and maybe you do, because maybe you saw something when you were out on the road during your career driving, but do you know how this was enforced pre-June 2016? Because I did just do a quick Google search to see when they kind of stopped enforcing it and that memorandum was issued. You were exactly right. June 2016.
Okay.
I think there's a second part to this question, because detractors of this executive order would say the FMCSA has always had that English proficiency standard. You're 100% correct. They just haven't been enforcing it for the last 9 years. So what did they do before the last 9 years? And I guess a little add-on to that question is, was this as big of a problem in 2016 as it seems to be in 2025, based on what you've seen, Brian?
It's becoming larger because, quite honestly, some of the fastest growing sectors in trucking are from other countries, are people of other countries. That's just case in point. They come here with money. They're able to buy a truck. They're getting CDLs, however they're getting them. And some of them are legit, some of them are not. And I think it's coming more to light now, just because we're having more drivers out there that English is their second or third language. It's really no different than you have a trucking company with 20,000 trucks and you have a trucking company with 5 trucks. What do you expect to see more violations and crashes from?
Yeah, very simple there. The company with all the trucks.
Right. So the more drivers we get in this category, the more violations we're going to see. And quite honestly, we see a lot of those violations now, but it's just not as impactful because it's not an out of service.
Right.
You
right.
know, we see trucking companies based in certain areas of the country that their driver fitness CSA score is 99%. Well, it's because they get a ton of non-English speaking violations, but that's the only thing law enforcement can do is write that up and send them on their way.
I see.
So,
Interesting.
yeah, there's still a lot of those being written.
And this is such a nuanced problem. I think that's something that you touched on there, saying like you want to see how the enforcement is going to shape up. I don't think this is something. First of all, as somebody that graduated with a degree in political science, the executive order or the thought, the idea of an executive order to me has always seemed a bit flawed with our system of government checks and balances that we are supposed to have. Having somebody just send something down from the top and say it changes today has always not sat right with me. And I don't care which president, which administration it is, it's always seemed like kind of a backdoor way to get something done. I don't want to say that this isn't a problem that needs to be solved. I'm going to say that I don't think that anything monumental changes in a couple of weeks. Like by the time you hear this episode, we're still having this conversation. We're not anywhere further down this line. Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, I think that there will be certain states that are going to really target certain companies. I mean, Arkansas has already put it out there that, they were right in the front of this, and they're in one of the main corridors for freight coming in from Mexico, especially going up for automakers up into the Midwest.
Right.
So I think you'll see a lot of work being done out of Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, states like that up in that channel, because now they've got some power behind it.
Right. Yeah.
So we do have drivers in this country that are here operating on B1 licenses and things like that, where they are Mexican nationals and they are able to bring loads up to a certain point, and then by cabotage rules, they have to pick up another load and go right back to Mexico with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing not a lot. We're seeing some, I don't want to say dishonesty in that part too.
There might be delivering a couple loads while they're up here in the interim.
Yeah.
Head back south.
Yeah. And on in that aspect, I actually feel for those drivers, because what are they going to do? Tell the company no?
Right. They're not calling the shots. They're just driving.
No, they're going to get left somewhere.
Yep.
They just want to go home.
Right.
So, I believe that if they're operating up here, they should be able to speak English and understand it, for the safety reasons of it, in case of an emergency and things like that. But as long as we have, and this is another reason why we're seeing more and more, I think, all your GPSs, all your ELDs, all the stuff, they have a foreign language. They speak Spanish, they speak Russian, they speak, these different languages.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier, for those drivers to use these products.
Sure. And, none of this to say that they're not necessarily competent drivers. I think that's something that, you can speak a different language and come to America and be proficient in driving a truck. And I think that right now with the political state of the United States, there's a lot of painting with broad brushes and there's a lot of black and white. And this is not that at all, I don't think. And I really hope that it doesn't end up that everybody that can't speak English as well as the next guy gets a target drawn on their back, because I also think that's the wrong way to go about this. There is a right way and a wrong way. I just think you're probably months away from actually figuring that out. And, it's great for states like Arkansas to be ahead of it. They were ahead of even the executive order. But at the same time, you wonder if those states aren't going to be the ones that exercise a bit too much enforcement and maybe go after it a little bit too aggressively. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shapes up, Brian. I mean, this is going to be a long process. And at the end of the day, again, our guys are all out there just trying to make money and trying to get home safe to their families. And I think that's the biggest part is this could be considered very easily a safety issue because of what you talked about with the road signage, understanding enforcement officers or inspections and things like that. And I think that everybody that has a dog in the trucking industry fight will say, look, better safety and better compliance is always a good thing for the industry as a whole.
It is. It is 100%. I don't disagree with that at all. I want to see it enforced fairly.
Yep.
Across the board. The level of not understanding the request is different than not understanding the language.
Yep. Absolutely. Very good point there, Brian. Before we leave the industry as a whole, let's talk about these ports. I saw a picture of the Port of Seattle yesterday. Never seen it look like a ghost town. I am a Pacific Northwest kid. I've driven by that port more times than I care to count. Never seen a picture of it look like it did the other day. I've heard some of the same things coming out of LA. You've got a ton of industry experience all across the board, Brian. What do you think about the tariffs that are going in and some of the international trade, I guess almost trade wars or trade conflicts that are going on right now? And how do you see it affecting not only, intermodal and just the dry van and reefer and all the other things that we drive, but dryage and all the rest of it that goes into it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I can give you a firsthand example of something that happened here. So along with all the safety and compliance stuff I do, I also get to have fun with working with a hockey team and an indoor football team here in Indianapolis.
Nice.
And this was the first year for the indoor football team to start up. Brand new team. Our turf was coming from Canada. It basically got held hostage until we paid the tariff. If we didn't pay the tariff, we didn't get the field.
Wow.
And I think they came to some negotiated deal where it was half and half or something like that. But it's going to be passed down to the consumer. That's why those ports are empty. The other countries are holding the stuff hostage saying, okay, here's the tariffs. Who's paying it? Not us. So, I see that being the ultimate end. There's going to be a lot of negotiating on who's actually going to pay it. And, another thing that I heard that I found interesting was there's basically a call charge for each time a ship hits a port.
Mm-hmm.
It's $1 million or whatever it is to just park the boat there and unload a few things. And then they can go to the next port. My understanding was it was like a one-time fee currently. But what's going to happen is it's going to be per port after that. And literally, we're talking millions of dollars each port. And so ships that are going to come over are going to want to unload everything at one place.
Right. Stop once and get back out on the open water.
Yeah. So now the way I understand it, that's going to hurt smaller ports that are maybe like in the Gulf or even, up like the secondary ports. Like you've got the Port of Seattle, but there's also a Port of Tacoma, and, they don't want to make that second stop.
Right.
So now it's going to overload certain ports. And, do we go back to having a situation like we had post-COVID where we had ships sitting out in the water waiting to get in because the ports were full?
Yeah, right. And all we did with that was block the Suez Canal for a few weeks. Like that was it was a bad deal all the way around.
Right.
During COVID, we could not get that right. And you hope that, this is sort of unprecedented, but you hope that they learned a few lessons from back then.
Yeah. And the other thing that played into that or playing into this is it's my understanding that the Panama Canal is running into water issues. There's a freshwater lake in the middle of the whole canal system.
Mhm.
And as they open those locks, that salt water comes into that freshwater lake. And they have to allow that lake to right itself before letting more ships through. And evidently that lake is drying up. So
Wow.
it's taking longer and they're allowing less ships to go through the canal because they have to allow that freshwater lake to right itself. So, I mean, it's all this stuff that, the port charge and the canal and stuff like that. These are also playing into the tariff thing that's going to just completely raise the cost of everything. Now we've got the thoughts of a lot more nearshoring. I don't know if you've ever been to Laredo,
Mm-mm.
but you talk about an amazing place when it comes to logistics. It is insane. They've got the main crossing, and then they've got a crossing like 2 miles down the road that's strictly for trucks. And now they're going to open another one a mile or two down the road from that one strictly for trucks because the amount of stuff that's being built or made in Mexico and brought into the US is astronomical because there's companies that are offshore that are starting to build manufacturing facilities in South America and trucking it up or training it up.
Mhm.
So they don't have to deal with the whole shipping part of it. So it's over the next, 20, 30 years, I think we'll see a major shift in the whole port thing. But yeah, the tariffs and all these other things, it's all going to get passed down to the consumer.
Yeah.
100%.
And that you hear a lot about that anytime the word it's funny. You go for 4, 8, 12 years without hearing the word tariff, and then all of a sudden you hear it nonstop for 4 years. And then, depending on the change in administration, we might go another 12 years without hearing it, but we're going to talk a lot about them for the foreseeable future. And I want to just kind of do a thought exercise with you here. I've got $100 to give you. You're a gambling man in this scenario. Are rates going up or going down in the foreseeable future because of all of this that we're seeing? And I want you to know, I'm not asking you this because you're an economist. I'm asking you this because you've got so much experience in the industry and you might have a prediction for us. So let's put
You
it in.
know, I think it will go up in certain areas. I hate to say both, but I
That's
think it's going
fine.
to go up in certain areas and down in certain areas. It all depends on where the freight is. If all the freight is, let's say it's all being unloaded in Los Angeles, freight coming out of Los Angeles is going to pay better because there is a huge supply. I'm sorry, there's a huge demand to
Right.
get that out of there, and the supply of trucks isn't there. Number one, it's California. You got people leaving that state left and right,
And not
especially
wanting to come back.
yeah, especially trucking companies. So, I mean, is that a bad thing for trucking? I guess, but not really, because now freight's going to pay pretty good out coming out of there to
Right.
where, and freight going back there. That's going to be a good lane. Some of these different cities that had smaller ports, it's not going to pay anything because there's 2 loads and 47 trucks.
Right. They're just waiting there for the next one. That's a really good point. And hey, I will tell you, as a bit of a degenerate gambler myself, Brian, saying both is hedging your bet, and that's not a dumb decision there. So I think it's a great answer from you because you're right. And I got to catch myself and call myself out for painting with a broad brush there and looking at things in black and white. Overall, it's going to be all over the place. But basically what I take away from that is your big ports are going to have a lot heavier trafficked lanes, at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I listened to some very, very good economists, and they're saying that there is a slight improvement coming. It's not going to be and I think we got a little bit spoiled, as they say, we saw a huge boom and during COVID and shortly thereafter, and then we saw a huge bust. But going back to 2019, when everything was normal, we're starting to creep back up to where things were then. So is it gangbusters? No, but at least it's a getting back to some normalcy.
Yeah, baby steps in the right direction.
Yeah, but we're just not going when I think people want to see an improvement like 2020. And I just don't think we're going to see that
Now, there's
maybe
another.
ever.
I already used that word once, unprecedented, and I think that's that is the word of order when you're talking about 2020 and everything that happened in the
Yeah.
world, but especially with the transportation industry. Unprecedented. Probably not going to see anything like that, at least in the near future.
No, not at all.
But you know, it's fun to talk about it with somebody like yourself that's seen so many different aspects of the industry and is so well in tune with what's going on out here, Brian. And I know that went away a little bit from kind of the main thing that we're talking about here today with TVC Pro-Driver, but I just really want to thank you for being willing to have that conversation with me because man, with the political climate out here right now, you and I just met today. We've had a couple emails back and forth. Jumping into a conversation like that with somebody that you don't know is a red flag on most people's watch. So I appreciate you being willing to discuss a few of those things. And before I let you go here, I just really want to hear about some TVC Pro-Driver success stories. Anything that you can bring us. Of course, we don't need to name names or states or anything like that, but can you give us a few examples before I let you go here of what exactly TVC Pro-Driver can do for maybe a prospective liquid trucking driver that's thinking about signing up?
Sure. Yeah. So obviously when we talk about keeping their protecting their MVRs and, doing what we do to get citations mitigated or adjudicated off of their record. Also on the CSA side, I don't want to give anybody the wrong impression. The one thing that we want to avoid saying is we're going to lower your CSA scores because, we can mitigate the points from that particular violation going on your CSA record. So that helps. But instead of a success story, this is my word to the wise. The only way scores come down, it really is over time. Mm-hmm. And you have to stop the flow of things coming in. So as an individual driver, I know you've heard it all your life. Pre-trips are so essential. Get out of the habit of just walking around kicking the tires or it's too cold, I'll do it later type thing. Get out there and do it. And quite honestly, do great post trips. That's key because if you find something there, okay, you're done for the day. You're not going to be late for anything. You can change that light. You can, fix a minor repair to where if you let it go, now you're broke down on the side of the road and you've missed your appointment and you've done all this other thing. Trip planning and doing good pre-trips is part of your good trip plan. But we have our success rate of those violations that are associated with a citation. We're about 97% success rate on those. Wow. And the only reason it's 3% is like I said, there's a couple states out there. If any money changes hands, even if the violation or the citation is knocked down to absolute nothing, we can't take the violation off the inspection report because they agreed to pay a $50 fine. Oh. So yeah, and some states are just like that. It just kills us. And quite honestly, another part of our service that's helpful to drivers is there are counties out there that are what they call no relief counties, and we'll tell you that it's a no relief county, meaning a CDL driver cannot get a relief off of a citation that was given because they consider that masking, and they have anti-masking rules in that jurisdiction. So, we'll tell you, look, we can fight it for you, but we're not going to win.
Right.
So, it's better off that you just unfortunately pay this one. And that's part of, once again, being honest and being true to the customer. Another reason Love's looked at us that way is because we're willing to say, well, unfortunately, this one is what it's going to be. Now on the crashes, when we challenge crashes, we've had a lot of success, about 82% success rate on challenging crashes. Wow. Using the crash preventability determination program, which has just recently been expanded. Hey, the feds gave us something. Yay. They actually gave us something. They gave us something and then they gave us something more. That's good stuff. Go figure. So yeah. They actually did us right.
Moon, right? Once in a blue.
And basically what that means is there are now 22 different crash types that if you have a crash, and they fall into one of these crash types, we can challenge it and get it taken off of your safety record. Because if companies or drivers don't know, when they put a crash on your record, it's regardless of fault or preventability. A crash is a crash is a crash is a crash to them.
Right.
So then we have to go in and challenge the preventability of that crash. And they gave us 22 different ways to do it. So, it's stuff like that we can definitely help with. And we've been successful a lot on that stuff.
That's great news. And I can't tell you how warm that makes my heart feel for truckers everywhere. Is one thing being a fly on the wall in this industry for the few years that I have been, that I would like to see just get better is just advocacy for truckers in general. And this falls right into that category, helping them out. Yeah, it's a really tough job, and having a court case on the schedule, not something that's conducive with a truck driver's schedule. It just won't be. You explained
Not
it
at all.
here, how many loads you're going to miss out on, how much money you're going to miss out on. So tell me where the drivers can go to find out everything that they need to know about TVC Pro-Driver, Brian.
Yeah, you can go to pro-driver.com and that will put you on the website. You can give us a call. I don't have that number handy. I failed.
It's okay. I've got a number here, but in the case that it's your personal desk number, I'm not going to give it out. Head over to the website. You'll be able to find it all right there at prodriver.com. He is the director of safety and compliance for TVC Pro-Driver, Brian Runnels. This was an absolutely phenomenal interview. I can't thank you enough for all of the insight and the tips that you gave the drivers as well, man. If you'll come back to us another time, I would love to have you back here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast in the future.
Be happy to. Just let me know, Marcus. Be happy to come back.
Awesome. Again, Director of Safety and Compliance for TVC Pro-Driver, Brian Runnels. We'll be right back. All right, Liquid Trucking, how about that for a special guest here on the Liquid Trucking Podcast? We have talked to some very knowledgeable people on this show. Brian slots right in beautifully next to all of those. Can't thank him enough for such an awesome interview, being wide open, and I guarantee you, based on a little conversation I had with Brian there right after the interview, we will get him back on this show again, and I would really like to maybe bring in a little bit of an aspect where you drivers might have some questions for the knowledge base that is Brian Runnels. Send them in, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. A lot of times, as somebody that does what I do for a living, I will sort of critique people that are interviewing people or that are having a conversation with people. And I would say, damn it, why didn't you ask him this? How did you miss that? Like, why didn't I want to know more about XYZ? I understand that also happens to people that consume podcasts on a weekly basis. If I missed something, let me know. I promise you I didn't miss it because I wanted to miss it. I missed it because of like IQ numbers and brain synapses and things that are far more intelligently designed than what I can walk you through. I don't try to miss anything, so if you want more information from our next conversation with Brian Runnels, the Director of Safety and Compliance for TVC Pro-Driver, please send them over to me ASAP. I'll get them logged, and I will make sure that the next time we are fortunate enough to have Brian join the show, we get some of those questions in front of him. Podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or hit me right in the pocket for those of you that have got my cell phone number. We are pushing up on an hour right now as we speak. That's how long that conversation went. Before Brian and I actually hit record, he said, I love these conversational type of interviews where we're just going to have a chat. We're going to go back and forth a little bit. He goes, you're going to look down at the time and you're going to realize we've gone way over. You know that because that's the type of conversation we're going to have. He was right. It happened 100% exactly like he said it would. And I'll be honest with you, I was all about it the entire time. I can live with that, man. If we're bringing you guys good content, let's take it long. I'm kind of thinking, and this is much to Much to my Audio Ninja Mike's dismay, what'd you think about like a 3-hour Liquid Trucking podcast episode? Would you sit there for it? Would you like it? I know a lot of you guys have a lot of windshield time, and I'm wondering how many of you, when this thing hits about the hour mark, are thinking, God, I've had enough of Marcus, or, man, I really wish I could hear more from some of the drivers. I don't really think any of you are pining for more of me, but I can bring you more of what we do correctly. Your feedback is always welcome. If you've got suggestions for topics on the show, you want to ask Brian Runnels a question the next time we have him on, or you've got some feedback for me and the way I do my job, listen, I can only get better, and I'm trying every single day. So send it in, podcast@liquidtrucking.com, or again, right to my pocket. That's going to do it for us today. It's all the time we have. Thank you so much for all of you out there listening today. You clicked download, whether you went to the website or you went to Spotify or iTunes or one of the many other places you can find us. Every single download matters here on our little podcast that could, and we're going to keep bringing them to you every single week. It's the Liquid Trucking Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus. Be safe out there, drivers. Keep the shiny side up. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.
Interested in finding out more about what it takes to bring a podcast like the Liquid Trucking Podcast to your fleet? Bulldog provides tailor-made top-to-bottom podcast production services. We'll meet your terminal staff, connect with your drivers, and bring you the content you want your drivers to hear. Type bulldog.works into your browser to connect with us and learn more about what we can do for your fleet. That's bulldog.works for podcasts, tenacious recruiting, and more.